listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and Master Coach Jenny Fontana, founders of the Life Coach Method. Each one of our uplifting and deep dive episodes is geared to help you tackle the things that hold you back from having the most magnificent life you deserve. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be coached.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Cali Estes from Unpause Your Life. My guest today is Jesse Hanson. You may recognize him. He has been around the block. He is the director of Atman Resorts and Retreats. He's also been a therapist and coach at Passages Malibu. You may have seen him on A&E's Intervention. And he's currently the clinical director at Holos Global and also co-founder of mentalhealth.com. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks so much, Dr. Cali. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me into your digital verse here, and excited to just share and see what kind of collective wisdom we can come to.
Well, first, tell us where you are. I hear birds. I hear, all kinds of really cool, relaxing sounds. Tell us where you are.
Yeah, 4 years ago, I took the biggest leap of faith of my life. I gave up a good salary at another clinical director role up in Canada, and kind of put in jeopardy everything that I had worked so hard for 40 years. And I took the leap of faith to follow my heart. I came down to scout out locations in Costa Rica for a company in Canada. And at that time, I just fell in love with it. I just fell in love with the land here. I fell in love with the culture here. And I came back, and within 8 weeks, I sold everything in my northern life, and I transferred here and with my family, and it's been the best move, and yet the most unpredictable. And I think maybe I can loop back into this moment later, and as we share through some of the timelines of what I'm actually doing here now and what ended up transpiring from following my heart instead of my head, And not to say I checked my head out. I have a thinking mind like everyone else. It's just I'm learning this process of feel what my heart wants and then go through the filters of my mind and left brain checklists and practicalities. And then if it's possible, probably I'm going to say go for
it. That's awesome. So start me with this. So how did you get into this field and you ended up at Passages? What was that like? And then how you got on A&E's Intervention, which this is the complete opposite. You're on A&E's Intervention, you're at the top of your game, you're doing all that. And then here you are in like mindfulness retreat where all of us want to be, which is the opposite of where you were. So kind of give us a story there.
Yeah, quick, very brief eagle eyes overview. I grew up in an overall good enough family and had a good enough life. I picked up enough of my own traumas that by my early 20s, I actually had my own dance with my part of my darkness, which was to get into substance abuse and to use, primarily alcohol at that time, some cannabis, nothing extremely hard, but just to say I do know that experience of what I call just master avoidance and dissociation and ultimately escapism. And it was in that darkest moment, as it often is, that I met a couple key teachers in Los Angeles. And that's when I started my healing, but it actually happened through more indigenous and ancient wisdom pieces before I ever got into clinical psychology, psychotherapy, anything like that. And so from that arc, it was in that LA life that I ended up meeting a brother called Waka Painia, who was from New Zealand, straight up Maori. We met in a yoga class, and he became one of my best buddies. And he was on that actually opened the door to me at Passages Malibu. He had already worked there, and they needed somebody else, and he was like, hey, I think I know the guy. And at that time, I actually ended up they were just launching Passages Ventura. So I was actually part of the core team that launched Ventura before returning to Malibu. But it was really through, in a way, through my own darkness and coming out of the light, meeting this guy in one of these communities, more of a spiritual community. And all of a sudden have a great role at Passages Malibu. I was there for, between Ventura and Malibu, it was almost 10 years. So it was quite a while. And it just taught me so much, not only of my own healing I have this belief when any of us are vulnerable or are doing our work, it positively impacts others. So to say, when any of us work, we all work. When one of us works, we all work. So even when I'm helping others, I'm also receiving my own healing upgrades. I'm sure you know that one. And So that was happening to me all through Passages days, and just came out of Passages with immense gratitude. And they gave me so many opportunities to implement things that were more holistic and integrative. And I know I wouldn't have gotten that at any other. Ended up figuring out a way to get my practicum hours there. That's where I finished most of my practicum for my doctorate. So Passages, I have a big place in my heart for that. Passages.
That's awesome. So two things. So first, I heard you found a pathway to recovery very unique, similar to me. Mine was also in a yoga class. So when I was reading your story, it's why I wanted to have you on, because I haven't met anybody else yet in my journey of doing this that found a unique way. Like something just clicked there with that. So that's, that's awesome. And I'm assuming you bring that into what you do now as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for acknowledging that. And nice to you as well, Dr. Cali, that, yeah, it's so common. I see two parallels. One is oftentimes people being put into AA and or rehab, traditional rehab, as their first step to recovery and awakening. And yeah, it sounds like you and I have a unique path, that it was something more embodied, more spiritual, and eventually got back to the clinical and the psychotherapeutic elements of it. So I like to notice that, and I find the same even in my collegiate world, where so many people are still traditionally trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, much more cerebral and analytical forms of psychotherapy and personal development work, and then spend whatever 5, 10, 15, 20 years in their practice, then realizing, oh my goodness, somatics and mindfulness and embodiment is actually where you can make deeper changes more quickly. So I'm grateful. I just see that correlation. And quickly, to loop before I get to here, I'll just also name, you'd asked about A&E's intervention. That was a major blessing. I was in Passages for eight or 10 years, and ended up basically getting scouted to Toronto, Canada, and created a place called Helix Healthcare Group with my co-founder, Mark Rivkin, who also, shout out to him, he's a good soul, and wanted to just do something good for the community. And that was great. That was a 4-year experiment. And in that process, through some of Helix's marketing directives, I ended up getting an interview for A&E's intervention. And I'd never thought of it, wanted it, but I just was like, why not, right? The opportunity presents itself, and ended up landing that role. I did 4 seasons. I can't remember, 12 or 14 episodes. And also, just to give respect to the Canadian company that produces this show, like, it was such an honor. Like, you asked what it was like working there. It was just, there are no second takes, there are no cuts. Like, it's literally just legit, actual, real what's happening. And I had, times where I'd be running through the snow in my nice outfit I had just bought or whatever, chasing people, trying to get them to come back into the intervention, gotten punches swinged at me, all sorts of wildness, and I just felt so supported by the production crew, and like, they honored the sacredness of the work. And I was always blessed to be myself, and there wasn't a script. So I want to just say, I think it was an amazing opportunity. And yet, yes, as many of us know, the realm of addiction, especially intervention to treatment, it's intense. It's really intense on everyone. It's intense on the identified patient. It's intense on the families. It's intense on the counselors, therapists, healers. And so, I'm now almost 40 years old. I have my firstborn child, and like many, I'm like, okay, I still do want to do the healing work, and yet the pure addiction realm is so intense. And that's some of the transition that started to happen to me around 2018 into the 2020s, which was basically, I started calling it blending the best of 20s and 30s Jesse. 20s was very, like, super open, most people's standards, very much weird, like doing all sorts of spiritual things, barefootedness, indigenous ceremonies, all these. And then into my 30s, becoming Dr. Jesse and having all the clinical and academic prestige. And so my 40s has been about world bridging, and that started with this creation called Atman, which is one of the main project that I'm involved with right now. And actually, just coming down here to live in Costa Rica, not really knowing what I was going to manifest, what the universe was going to co-inspire with me. Two epic projects came to me within the same month, both through just previous connections with good souled folks. And one of them is mentalhealth.com, and the other is Atman.global. And they're very akin. I mean, mentalhealth.com obviously is an incredibly amazing URL and digital real estate piece, that the vision is to continue to offer free resources for people to learn more about mental health in general, to get connected with therapists, and eventually we will, of course, be including different services and connections with other collaborators on the healing world. And so that's in motion. We're still in beta, but it's going amazingly, and it's just super exciting. And it is admittedly, obviously, much more of a digital company that will funnel into in-person experiences. And Atman Global is a wellness brand that we are creating healing spaces for different meeting people where they're at. It's a super unique approach, a disruptive innovation even to the industry of hospitality, wellness, and ceremonial work. And in that, it's meaning that the space itself, just like to me, any great therapeutic container starts with how the space is set. And so imagine a resort that's very nice and not overly luxurious, but still nice, but more in tune with nature, and that the space itself is healing already. And you can be there as a resort guest, but you can also then upgrade to meet you where you're at with your level of readiness for deeper experiences or awakening. It could just be as simple as a massage or yoga class. It could be next levels breath work, maybe some conscious adventure. What's it like to face your fear on the top of a waterfall or something like that, all the way into very specialized clinical work where people can reprocess childhood trauma, deal with tough relational and family issues, and essentially have it customized and created, and then occasionally rerunning more what is commonly called retreats. We're calling it immersions. Did anyone else ever realize to retreat is kind of another way to say to escape or to run away? So we're like, wait, what are we all doing? We're like, I know it's fun. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love what's happening in retreats, but really immersions is a much more genuine word to, if we're really going to immerse ourselves in our personal growth, you know? So that's what I'm up to now. Both of those companies are in embryonic stages and coming into life this year. We've been doing some beta retreats, immersions with Atman, and then I don't want to go on air here and not name and honor the most important job I have, which is that I am a father, and I love getting to be in this role of a father. Admittedly, one of my biggest challenges is balancing all of this. And yet it's the fatherhood piece is just so special to me, and that was a big reason of why I wanted to live here, is I wanted to raise my kids more in nature and more in connected community and things like this. So that's my other, it's all interconnected. I don't even want to say personal and professional don't have to be these two different
Yeah.
worlds.
How old are the
So
kids?
I actually have a blended family. And so we have a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And they all grow up here, and they go to school here, and they go to the rivers, and we do jaguar training and teach them
Oh,
how to.
wow.
The land I live is called the Baruka tribe and the Jaguar people, and there are jaguars around, and not during the day, and no one ever gets attacked, but this is their land. And so
Yeah.
when you go to the river, you have to, and this again, it connects so much with kids. And one of the main approaches I use therapeutically is through parts work, dissociative structural integration, things like this, structural dissociation. In other words, parts work, the recognition that though we have this one brain and one body, trillions of neural networks equaling many different personalities, and we are, many different people within this one form. And within that work, this is the inner child work that so many people talk about, or think we're never done, right? But we do our inner child work, and that's a model, that's a piece of this model. And I can't help but always notice that there's such a strong correlation between my ability to do my own inner work and tend to little Jesse, and how I can raise my children, and vice versa. And when I have breakthroughs in how I can relate to them in certain challenging moments, I can notice the difference inside. And so that's another cool way that, kind of like I said, the personal and professional worlds can be blended. But yeah, we love raising our kiddos here, and feel very blessed. And like I said, it took a leap of faith and courage to let go, of everything I thought I knew and thought I wanted.
So that's interesting. So let's talk about a couple things. So you followed your passion, or where you felt your intuition led you to Costa Rica. How many times do you see clients that are stuck in addiction because they have something they want? Maybe they want to live somewhere, or they're with the wrong partner, or they're in the wrong field of work, and they just stay stuck because they have that fear of jumping. How often do you see that?
All the time, both in the addiction recovery world as well as just neurotypical humans. Um, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if we caught it in the very beginning. I said I like to follow my heart. However, I don't do it without my mind. I listen to my heart first and then check in with my mind. So my wish or invitation for anyone that's listening, if this resonates at all, is yeah, maybe you can't just quit your job right now and get the perfect job or figure out a way to leave your partner and have a perfect partner. We're looking at the polar opposite of our suffering models here, and we're like, oh, well, it could be this. My invitation would be, what's here? What's here? What's here? What's here? What are these steps? Like maybe I can't quit my job yet, but I can at least more actively start interviewing for new jobs while I'm still working so that I don't put myself in a position where I'm overly stressed and screwed for money or whatever, right? And that's like, yeah, well, my heart says just tell my boss F you and I'm out of here. Okay, right, good. Let's not jump right on that. Let's use the head too and say, yeah, maybe we're not going to say that, but we are going to start looking for others, start exploring, start, whatever. There's always a step, whether we're talking about yoga, muscle, bicep building, psychological building, there's always an edge called delicious discomfort. And if we can learn how to find that edge, we can just have consistent growth like this instead of trying to go, "Boom." And I think that that's the trap, right? Is like, well, I'll never be able to do that. So I'll just stay stuck here and miserable. And now that bottle's looking more tempting, or whatever my choice of escapism becomes more tempting, not because I'm a bad person, but because I don't know how to follow my heart yet. I haven't mastered that. And in the nerdy neuroscience world, we would call this bihemispheric brain activity, or the flossin of the corpus callosum, however I like to say it, that rhymes. But it's the nerve ganglia that gets both sides of our brains talking to each other. And so it's that same algorithm over and over again. You can look at it from left, right brain. You can look at it from head, heart. You can look at it from, self and other. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that dichotomy, we get caught in the dichotomy as opposed to the understanding the unity, which is it's and both, right? There's some level of your heart needs to guide, and there's definitely a level where your head needs to create some parameters and boundaries. But to circle back directly, I see it quite often with all of us, and even me, even though I pulling this off in a great way with this last big leap of faith, there's micro leap of faith like this, I think, for all of us each day. Can I trust the process? Can I detach from the outcome? It's a big thing. I'm working on a conscious couples experience coming up. It's specifically, this immersion is specifically for couples. However, hopefully the intelligence inside of it is for any of us, but it's just around on better understanding what healthy intimacy looks like. And where from a variety of my studies in neuroscience, quantum physics, spirituality, ancient wisdom, tantric understanding of intimacy, is one of the key variables is actually learning how to still be present while not being attached to the outcome, and not trying to feel like I know for sure this person is my person forever. Of course, that's what I wish for, you wish for, it's the romantic end. But that level of attachment creates a whole nother series of phenomenon in our psyche that creates more destructive behaviors because we're in some version of clinging, right? And I'm not saying it's easy, and I for sure have not mastered it. And I just starting to notice it. I feel like this level of learning how to be there's one of the mantras I was given on my path was speak my truth without shame or blame and without attachment to outcome. Truth, no shame, no blame, meaning I don't want to shame you, I don't want to blame you, I don't want to take shame on myself. I'm just saying this is my truth. And the hardest part is, and so many times, whether I look at people that come through my now more trauma reprocessing based retreats, or I look back at my Passages days and other treatment centers I worked at in the recovery world, people get so much upgrades and openings in these 1 week or 30 days or 90 days or whatever your experience is, because it's in a bubble. And that's beautiful, and it needs to be that way for certain repair to happen. But the challenge is once that bubble pops, and we all know this in the addiction world so often, how quickly people relapse right after they get out. It's again, not that they're innately broken or have this disease. It's that they're so much of what ends up coming to clarity as we start to look at our dysfunctions is that we would have to have some pretty tough conversations with people that are close to us. Usually it's mom and dad, could be a sibling, and then those conversations don't happen, or they happen in a disingenuous way. We don't speak our truth without shame or blame or without attachment. That we're so attached to the outcome, we're so afraid that we might hurt them or lose them or whatever, right? So just trying to flesh this out, draw this out of how big of a deal this is. And I'll close this download with just saying it is from quantum physics ultimately, and understanding the quantum field, and understanding that when you actually get into the highest current levels of science available to us, that's the truth, whether we want to accept it or not. Change is the only constant. To try to keep thinking we can control it or know the future is where we start creating most of our suffering, you know. So it's a lot to hold, and it's a lot to be with. And yet it's also, I know this is specifically around folks with addiction recovery. However, I've played in all the arenas, and it's fascinating to me, Dr. Cali, how like we're all working through the same challenges of primarily feelings of abandonment and feelings of inundation and overwhelm. And how we deal with those feelings is the difference between someone that ends up as my guest on Interventions TV show or someone that ends up in a corporate executive high functioning retreat, right? But at the end of the day, it's still so similar, you know. And that's, I hope to help people hear that more, that there's so much projections on addicts as being so broken, diseased, wrong, and yet the corporate guy who's a workaholic and avoids his family in the same way as the addict is praised and given more money and prestige, and probably cheating on his wife at the same time, you know, and that's all accepted. So I just call that flag on the play, that regardless of the levels of dysfunction, the levels of how much our choices are destroying ourselves, our lives, our bodies, is relative to the amount of pain that we haven't processed. Right? So the more
That's
pain,
so true.
yeah.
That is such a true statement, because I do every type of addiction and vice, everything, down to, tech addiction, down to, getting addicted to the retreats. I have a female client that all she does is go from retreat to retreat to retreat. And I'm like, what are you learning? Have you learned anything? It's become an addiction, So I think it's interesting that you said that.
Thanks for highlighting it. And yeah, it's again, it's a fascinating one to look at and take outside of any particular construct of normal person, addict, whatever, just human. The way we, like, the levels of our dysfunction and our self-destruction is directly correlating to the not amount of pain that has happened to us, but to the amount of pain that I haven't processed somatically in my body, in my nervous system. Maybe I've talked about it till I'm blue in the face, but if I haven't actually done the somatic work on it, that's a whole nother conversation. But maybe, I know we're wrapping here soon, is to say that, yeah, that's another fascinating topic to consider, is just the correlations of trauma and addiction, trauma and destructive behaviors. And I've seen it now 10,000 times. I'm sure you have too. It's like, it's very consistent amongst us humans. When we do the deeper work and we process our traumas, we are not as dysfunctional, destructive, maladaptive. We start to show up in a different way in our life. And so, yeah, I think that's a little bit about Dr. Jesse, and I feel very blessed to spend this time with you. It was really fun. I feel really comfortable chatting with you, and thanks for listening.
I could talk to you about this all day, because I do all the quantum physics stuff, but I know we are out of time. So I want to thank you for coming on. And how do our listeners find you if they want more information on these immersions or the mental health site? Where are you? Where are you located?
The easiest place to find me still now is Hanson Healing. My last name is Hanson. It's Hanson. It's actually Viking. We would say son of Han. Hey, I am Han, son of Han, son of Han, son of Han. But that was too complicated for the modern world, so we changed it to Hanson. Anyways, hansonhealing.com is my personal website, and there's links in there to these other projects. And I'm out there in the Google Digiverse. We call that the almighty oracle now. Google.
Very nice. We'll put that all in the show notes so they can find you as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, we can circle back at another time if it's intriguing. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing and helping to create platforms for this kind of truth to come out.
Awesome. You've been listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and my guest, Dr. Jesse Hanson. Please give us a listen and a follow. Until next time, guys.
Thank you for listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and Master Coach Jenny Fontana. Head over to www.thelifecoachmethod.com to learn more about coaching yourself and how to become a master coach.